Hello, I'm Pete Martin. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in other videos of mandolin, fiddle, improvisation, and many other musical subjects, click the subscribe banner below. And if you want to be notified when I post new videos, click the bell icon right next to it. This series is aimed at people who have never improvised before but want to learn to improvise. It also works for people who do improvise but want to add some new things and knowledge to their improvising. People who have never improvised, I would definitely suggest go back and start at number 1 of this series and work through numerically, as things tend to build on each other. People with more experience improvising can skip around, although they probably would benefit from starting at number 1, once again, because the videos do tend to build on each other. There's a PDF that goes along with this, so email me and ask for Improv from Scratch, video number 13, Improv against 1 and 5 dominant chords. In the first 12 videos of these series, we've looked at major scales and dominant scales and how we can use them in improvising. We've looked at several things to practice on them, and we can use every one of those items that we practiced in improvising. In this video, we're going to put some of that together. First, we need to determine the chord progression of what we're playing against. So here's a generic chord progression of 1 and 5 dominant. It's 2 measures of 1, 4 measures of 5, and 2 measures of 1. We see that here. Remember, to us improvisers, a 5 chord is always a dominant chord. You can play it as major, but you have a lot more color options available to you if you use dominant. The chord outlines for this chord progression are in example 1, so learn those now. Let's now create a solo against this chord progression. Let's start with the first 2 measures of the G major chord. We can start with a G arpeggio from the G note, the open G string on the mandolin, up to the G note 2 octaves higher, which is the 3rd fret of the E string. This is example 2. Play it now. Once we get to the note G, we're going to ascend the chord tone scale, the major chord tone scale, up to B. This is example 3. One, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Example 4 puts together what we have so far. In example 5, we're going to descend the G major scale in thirds. Example 6 puts together what we have so far. In example 7, we're going to descend the major chord tone scale. One, two. 1, 2. Example 8 puts together everything we've done so far. Example 9, we descend a G major chord arpeggio. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. In example 10, we now have everything we need for 2 measures of a G chord. So we put everything together, and the PDF describes how everything was derived. Play example 10 now. The G chord arpeggio, chord tone scale, the G major scale in thirds, chord tone scale, G chord arpeggio. At this point in the chord progression, we now encounter 4 measures of a D7 chord. So the scale we're going to use is the D dominant scale. Review example 1 if you need to look at the original chord progression again. So let's start with a full measure of dominant chord tone scale lick number 5. And this is example 11 here. In example 12, we descend the D dominant CTS from F sharp to A. Example 13 shows what we've done for the D7 chord so far. In example 14, we ascend a D dominant arpeggio, a D7 arpeggio, from A to F sharp. One, two. 1, 2. Example 15 shows what we've done so far on the D7 chord. In example 16, we play a measure of the D dominant CTS lick number 8. example 17, we put together what we have of the D7 chord so far. In example 18, we ascend D dominant chord tone scale from D to A. In example 19, we put together what we have of D7 so far. In example 20, we descend for 3 notes a D dominant arpeggio. One, two. 1, 2. Example 21 shows what we've got for the D7 chord so far. In example 22, we descend the D dominant CTS 2 notes. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Example 23 has the entire 4-measure D7 phrase, including how all these were derived. I play that here. Go ahead and memorize that. We have the D dominant chords tone, the D dominant chord tone scale lick number 5. Now D dominant chord tone scale, a D7 arpeggio, the dominant chord tone lick number 7 for the D chord. D dominant chord tone scale, a D arpeggio, and 2 notes of the D dominant chord tone scale. So that adds up to Let me do that one more time. In example 24, we're back to the G major chord, so we need 2 measures of a G chord. So we're going to first start out by playing a G major arpeggio pattern, and we see that in example 24. In example 25, we're going to start on a D note and descend the G major chord tone scale. Then when we get to G, we're going to come up the chord tone scale to the G, the octave higher. One, two, three. One, two, three. In example 26, we now have the complete two measures of G that we need. Now, we do end on a note in a third measure, but that's really just an ending note. So we've really filled up two complete measures with the eighth note phrases. And in example 26, we see how all these were derived. So listen to example 26 and then learn that. In example 27, we now have the entire solo. Notice how this solo was made up of nothing but things that we have studied up to this point. This solo is just one possible way of putting all this stuff together. There's just infinite possibilities that you could do with these. So your assignment now is to spend some time and make a whole bunch of others. You're going to find some things that you really like the sound of, and then you're going to find some things you like the sound of less. The things that you like the sound of, practice those and get those in your hands and in your mind. These will become licks that you will use in your improvising. Now you have to do this a whole bunch in the beginning by doing like we did here and kind of composing these solos. Eventually, after you do this enough, you'll start to be able to do this much more on the fly. So practice slowly with a play along against 1 and 5 chord progressions. You might just want to start with G major to D7 like we did here, but eventually you should move it through more keys as well. Okay. Now you can do this adding the 4 chord in anything. Remember in earlier videos we did some songs like 9-Pound Hammer, so you could easily do that on that piece or any common 3-chord song you know. Remember, anytime you encounter the 5 chord, it's a dominant chord. When you feel comfortable doing all this stuff that we've looked at here in many different keys and on many different chord progressions, then move on to the next video. I'm Pete Martin. Thanks for watching.